And welcome to all of you to this Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Mountain Time. You are visiting here in the Awareness Grove, and it's wonderful to have you here. And it's my plan every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. Mountain to share some insights from Awareness, which is Awareness and Forests. It's actually a book series of which I have published book number one, and on a quarterly basis out it will come. But along the way, I want to share some insights with you today as walking with nature, experience the extraordinary. I have 5 points that I would like to raise with you. Tends to be a little bit more conceptual for this one. I am in the process of writing a prompt and activity book using these 5 insights so that it will work out to being a workbook that will be somewhere in about 100 pages area. So bringing out a good 7 times 5, 35 great ideas, tips for you, activities that you can take up so that while you're walking with nature, you can experience the extraordinary. But I wanted to go over some of the base information with you today. But before I jump into those 5 points, I just want to share with you is that I'm finding a great pleasure in walking and shooting YouTube shorts so that when I get back, I upload a video that is a little bit less than 55 seconds, which is called a short on YouTube. And it brings forth an idea, insight, and or a question that has come to me as I am walking in the area in which I do most of my walking. And by doing that, I actually see things a little differently. And that's wonderful. And I would like to continue doing that. So I've challenged myself to do at least 30 to 35 videos in a row and see what comes of it. If it extends past that, oh, great, let's go. I'll go for it. But I just wanted to acknowledge is that I'm going to experiment. And that's one of the ways that I believe that while walking with nature, experience the extraordinary, you set yourself an intention like that. And that will come out a little bit more as I share these 5 points with you today. But I'm having fun with it at the moment. And Georgia, who's the dog that joins me, while she's not always aware of what's going on, sometimes she finds herself in the video, and I acknowledge her, and then we continue on. So why don't we get into today's presentation, which is about walking with nature, experience the extraordinary, and go over these 5 points with you. What I'd like to do is just bring them to your attention now. I'm just going to read each one of them, and then I'm going to go into each of them a little bit deeper. So the first one is minding and presence. You might go minding. What's minding? Well, most people might use a term like mindfulness. I use minding, and I'll explain why. Nature and well-being, adventure and exploration, creativity and inspiration, and reflection and integration. Now, these are 5 topics that I picked for today. As we go forward, there might be more broad topics to go over, but I thought that these would be fun to share with you today. Now, the first one I'd like to go over is minding and presence. Now, I mentioned just about a minute ago there, a lot of people will use mindfulness, the state and quality or the understanding of being full of one's mind. In other words, paying attention to what's taking place around you and finding yourself present in that moment, being there with what is taking place. Now, I choose to use the word minding because the ing that goes with mind suggests a process. So when I'm minding, I'm going, What is my minding that is taking place? The mental aspect of what's going on, the emotional aspect that goes with that. So sometimes I'll use a word like hearting, what's coming from my heart, or handing, what's taking place with my hands as I experience what's taking place. So it's just another way for me to take a look at these words and to bring some sense of clarity, some sense of presence for myself. So while I'm walking, often what takes place is I do set an intention, sorry, and so that I have more attention to what's taking place. Now, that intention could be something as simple as just enjoying the sounds that I'm hearing. Another one might be looking for the different colors. Now, I find myself here at the end of April. Most of the snow has now gone. I still see little patches of it around. And I'm starting to pay attention to the colors, like the crocus have just come up, and there's that purple and yellow that you see, and I get to enjoy it. So the intention of the walk is to look for the crocus and to see the individual ones, but also to see the bit of a landscape of them and how they popped up out of the ground. So I'm actually getting a sense of the extraordinary of the plants, the crocus that are there through the intention of this walking with nature. And I find that that is a great way of just moving through the walk. I actually took it out as a bigger idea at one point in my life when I was traveling, is that I would set an intention of what was going to happen for that day. And I was on a trip going around the world. And so to give myself something to think and feel and sort of participate in was I set an intention around children's play and watching for where there is playing unfolding or play equipment. It was kind of a fun way for me. And I took some really wonderful pictures along the way. And actually, I met some really great persons along the way and got invited out for meals and everything. I'm not saying that's going to certainly unfold while you're walking with nature. And yet, you might meet some people along the way that might turn into great friends who share the same experience of the extraordinary, and they would enjoy having conversations with you, even if it was a quiet time by the creek or something like that. So, this notion of cultivating this qualities of being minding, the qualities of presence. I'm thinking now as I'm sharing this with you, I have a friend who is doing a lot of work in the area of presence. And I think what I'll do is I'll invite him on to a Saturday morning presentation and let him share a little bit more about what is presence. I have certainly been digging around in it. It's fascinating, and its connection to the mindfulness that some people will use, or minding as that I use it. Because I always think of it as in the moment, being here, not so much about coming from air or going to there. It's being here. Again, I'm playing with the words. Air is sort of the where you come from. Here is here. There is where you're going. And walking has this potential of bringing out the air, the here, and the there. And that's kind of a fun way in which to take a look at it. So let's take a look at the next one, which is nature and well-being. Now, I put nature in here simply because I want to remind us that I have my own personal nature of who I am as a person. And in my pursuit of living an extraordinary life, is that I'm attempting to be for the world, with the planet, from the whole. Now, to be able to do that, I'm interacting with nature, the plants, the trees, the flora, the fauna, all of what it is that we call nature, the out of doors, and how do I bring who I am interacting with that wider sense of nature, and how does that wider sense of nature interact with me? And that's where I've come to understand this notion of well-being for self and well living with others. Now, the well-being aspect goes back to one of the key words in the name of my company, wealth movement. Wealth is about well-being to the nth degree, well living to the nth degree. So well-being for self, well living with others. Now, the well-being aspect is to truly understand this notion of health and wellness, leisure and recreation. Out of that comes the playful playing and being full of play and being able to enjoy oneself, and to understand the notion of wellness and health, which means understanding about illness as well. And in there is a play on wealth as well. Is if you take health and put a W in front of it, wealth, it speaks about different ways in which to take a look at this exchange that we have. Some people talk about it through the ears and eyes of money. I might talk about it through the wealth that I gather of relationships and connections with the outer doors. There is a wealth of that comes from that as well. But that's a topic for another day, but I just wanted to bring it to the forefront. So this notion of well-being for me is with the walking, there's a health aspect, and you can certainly research the health aspect as a physical movement. But there's also the mental health, the ideas around holistic psychological health and safety. That is something that is certainly bubbling more to the surface, is that we're being challenged around that, because a lot of what is the noise that's around us, and how might we find our own well-being in that. There are many topics to explore there. Again, I have another friend who is making a connection between mentoring and well-being, mental health. And it might be fun to bring him on to have some conversations about that as well. Not so much from the mentoring in and of itself. I cover off that topic on Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m. There's an alternating conversation about mentoring and wealth movement. But today, I just wanted to emphasize the importance of this idea of well-being and its connection with nature, my own personal nature, your nature, and how we interact from a well-being with nature in the outer doors. There's lots of topics we can dive into with that one, and upskill ourselves in all of that. And that I look forward to sharing with you. The third one I wanted to go over is adventure and exploration. If there's anything in my life that I've had the pleasure of doing over the years, is to explore a lot of different things. Now, they could be places. I've had the pleasure of traveling around the world. I've worked on 6 of 7 continents. I've also had the pleasure of visiting, somewhere around 50 countries now, seeing lots of different kinds of nature, landscapes, experiencing waterfalls and forests and animals. Again, I've taken pictures, written about it over the years. A lot of that will probably start to unfold itself in awareness in terms of popping itself out through the book. And also this exploration highlighting the sense of the adventure that is available to us when we're out in nature. Now, where I walk around here, there's a ravine that I drop down into. On the slope is more of a shrub grassland on one side. The other side is a spruce forest. So I get to walk up and down and in and out a lot through a lot of different kind of landscapes. And therefore, each time I walk, there's a little bit of a different exploration that takes place that gives me a different sense of adventure. Now, sometimes the deer are around. Sometimes I actually see the coyotes. Other times I can hear the woodpeckers in the background. Sometimes the squirrels are running around. The different plants that come up at different times of the year all present this really wonderful landscape that unfolds as I walk with it. And therefore, I'm experiencing a lot of the extraordinary of what's taking place. And those short videos that I mentioned that I'm putting up on YouTube, the Awareness YouTube channel, they're capturing some of those kind of moments that I'm seeing. So I would certainly encourage you to go over there and take a look at what's possible. Now, this adventure that you set up for yourself, there will be some conversations and presentations that I'll bring the sense of safety to the foreground. I'm in the process of writing a prompt and activity book around the notion of manage safe systems and lead safer practices. Now, while you're going out on your own in terms of these solo walks, you still have to think about safety. If you're going out with a group of friends, you have to think about safety. And therefore, I want to bring that to the foreground for you so that as you are in your adventures and exploring it, you have a sense of safety is there for you, and what might be some of the things to be thinking about as you are doing it. The next thing I wanted to just have a brief introduction to involves the notion of creativity and inspiration. The creativity for me is there's two elements of the creative process. Creativity that sort of is bringing it into you, and then the innovation of what you do with it. Now, that term had a lot of connection in the business world when I was an entrepreneur, consulting, doing team-related work. But I find it's also important while walking is that there is this sense of the creativity of going into it, and then what am I doing when I bring it out? And let me give you an example, is that I might see something and I write about it in a poem and I'm taking it into my notebooks. And then what I'm doing is I'm finding ways to bring it out of my notebooks and out. And again, the Awareness, the book, is one of the places where I share some of my poetry, my observations. And therefore, what I'm doing is I'm tapping into this inspiration that wells up inside of me and finds its way out for the world, with the planet, from the whole. And I love that word is because inspire means to breathe in, and expire means to breathe out. And to inspire is to breathe the spirit of what is available to us. And to me, on the time that I'm doing my walking and experiencing the extraordinary, the notion is this creativity inspiration mix is something that I learned about over the years. And there's an author by the name of Cameron, The Artist's Way is one book that I picked up at one point in time and sharing it. There's another book I picked up the other day and I read through it, and it was someone who was using nature and interacting with nature through walking and then bringing it back, painting, and using it as a way in which to work through their recovery with cancer. And I thought that that was a really wonderful way for them. And the stories that unfolded, it was two women who got together and did these walks and then shared their stories of cancer, and then the inspirational creativity that they put into bringing out the stories. One was a painter, one was a writer. And it was just kind of interesting to read that, having had my own experiences of cancer as well. It was just a wonderful way to catch that expression that they were sharing. And there's lots of other books that are available to you. There will probably be, again, some prompt books that I will be bringing out. Certainly, Awareness is a mix of prompt and activities. And as I produce those on a quarterly basis, you might find a way in which to bring this notion of creativity and experience to the foreground for yourself. The fifth one I'd like to just go over is reflection and integration. And I've sort of been hinting at a little bit, but let me just emphasize this a little bit more. Through my days of being involved in adult education, and there was this really wonderful term that came out, certainly from a business world, consulting world, human performance improvement, was this notion of reflection and integration. The reflection of in and reflection on. The ideas here is while you're walking and you're experiencing the extraordinary, you could be reflecting in what's taking place, what's unfolding. So through the creativity and the inspiration, the way in which you want to express that might be through a picture, might be through a quick drawing on a notebook that you have with you. But that reflection in can also then lead to reflection on, which could be what happens afterwards. You think about, well, what was happening? And you're reflecting on what took place. Now, one of the great things that I have learned is how to reflect in and reflect on at the same time. So let me explain that one. While I'm in my reflection, I'm noticing it, I also have the ability to sort of withdraw outside of myself and look at myself interacting with that landscape or with that portrait, with that tree or with those trees. And I can sort of think and feel through what I might be experiencing, and sort of adds another layer, level to what's happening. Now, that's simply, I came to understand that technique because of my facilitation background, is that while I was facilitating a group of people, I had to be reflecting in to stay a little bit ahead of the group to notice, oh, I think I need to do a little shift here. But I also was attempting to figure out how to keep improving my practice. So I learned to come out and look at the whole about how I was facilitating and what the reactions of the group was, but doing it one level removed. And that's what I mean about being able to use those tools and techniques while you're in the outer doors. And it becomes particularly important if you happen to be watching this video and one of the jobs that you have or something that you're thinking about volunteering into is guiding those that you're interacting with to appreciate nature and how to find ways in which to weave nature in. So in a sense, you're walking with nature as a guide, helping those experience the extraordinary, what it is they're picking up, and therefore reflection and integration for yourself, but also those that you're interacting with comes to the foreground as well. Now, this topic here, I certainly encourage finding ways, this integration, how might you do it? For some, it might be through writing, others drawing, others photography. Someone might make a movie. You might do sculpting. There may be any number of other ways. There are some people who have talked to me about how to use string to create multi-dimensional figures. Sort of like paintings, instead of using watercolor acrylics, they're using threads, and they're building out a picture that way. There are other people who are saying, well, instead of writing it in prose, I'm going to do more of it through poetry. And that's great. There's other people who are using different kind of filters on their photography and attempting to take a look at it through maybe just strictly black and white rather than using color. There are others who are finding really beautiful ways to use recycled material that they find in nature, and they bring it back to be able to create different images. I have one image, it's using a carabiner, not an actual climbing one, more of an aesthetic carabiner. But what I've done is I've hooked on different looping objects that I found. They may be hair bands or elastics or string or plastic that you find around the top of cans. And I sort of put them together and I layered them out and I took a picture of it. And I went, well, this is kind of an interesting image and a reminder about picking up the litter. And that's another topic for another day. And one could certainly weave in pet peeves there. But the idea here is to really bring all of these into the foreground for us in terms of walking with nature, the experience, the extraordinary. How can you bring minding and presence to it? Your own personal nature and interacting with nature and how it goes both ways and the well-being that's inherent to that. The adventure and exploration, the placing intention into what you're doing, the creativity and inspiration in the moment that you find yourself, but also the reflection and integration that you might weave into it after you might come home, or maybe having a drink of water and sharing a story with someone about what you just saw, what you are seeing at that point in time. These are just 5 of the topics that I thought would be of great value to you to bring out this sort of sense of truth and worth and utility of walking with nature and experiencing the extraordinary. Over the weeks to come, I will dig in a little bit more. I might actually do a video just on minding and presence and go over some meditation techniques. It's not that I'm going to become a deep practitioner of it with you. There are others who are out there that can do a much better job, but I can bring some ideas to you and encourage you to dig deeper. And there's lots of books and that. And if I do find someone along the way that I think would be great to have along as a guest, I will certainly be inviting them. I've mentioned already a couple of friends, one on presence and one on mental health and the outdoors. But there's lots of really wonderful people I'm meeting along the way. And also, I'm going to be bringing those who are really interested in the sense of the technology that is being framed by what's going on. There's technology like the augmented tools where you bring your camera up, you're opening it up like a QR code that opens up an app, and you can find out the name of the tree and some of the notion of what is this tree about, its dendrology, the study of that tree. There are others that are looking at what's the landscape and how many trees are around your house and how might that connect to your well-being. I'm finding a lot of these interesting technologies, and I think that I will bring those to the foreground as well. And sometimes I'll be mentioning it in the Awareness book so that you can do your own exploration and see what might be available to you. So there's lots of ideas to bring forward on these Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Mountain for you and I as we visit the Awareness Grove. And I certainly would encourage you to comment, like, and subscribe and share wherever you might find this video. But please, if you would, interact through wealthmovement.com. You can do /, there's awareness as it's spelt in the title and the logo, nature. There are different ways in which to interact. And if you have a comment, a question, have a funny you want to add into the mix, then just use the contact page and share it, and I will do my best to, if it's a question, to answer. If it's a funny, I'll get your permission, and maybe we can do is bring it up on one of these broadcasts on a Saturday, or work it into the book as well. So there's lots of different possibilities as we interact with the grove. So in closing, I just say peace be with you in walking with nature, and as you explore the extraordinary, as you experience all of what it is that you experience. And with that, take care.